Bible prophecy. We have invited David Clareau into the studio today. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Do you think the events of the last 2 years, the pandemic, the political atmosphere between Russia and the Ukraine, NATO, the United States and China, and other events like 5G networks coming into our lives, Big Brother looming, perhaps greater, are we headed toward the end time? What's your take?
Well,
I didn't believe it when the first call came in. Jerusalem guards, men trained to notice everything and exaggerate nothing, were shaken. They spoke of 7 strangers appearing just beyond the Temple Mount wall at first light. Their watches flashed 6:66, a time that shouldn't exist. One guard swore he felt the air fold, like the seconds themselves hesitated. Another said the light bent around the figures, as if time itself was letting them pass. Before we continue, subscribe for more discoveries where faith meets archaeology, and don't forget to turn on notifications for our next revelation from the Holy Land. Every camera that tried to capture it froze, as if technology bowed to mystery. No news outlet touched the story, and when I finally saw the silent footage myself, my stomach tightened, because what those 7 shapes did next should not be possible. The guards said the city went quiet, like Jerusalem itself was holding its breath. They tried to follow, but each step they took, the 7 seemed farther away, even though they moved at a calm, walking pace. The sun had barely risen, yet alleys shimmered as if midday heat had fallen early. One guard whispered that shadows pointed the wrong direction. Another swore the figures weren't walking on the ground, but slightly above it, their reflections trembling on the stones. Their radios crackled into static, watches still locked at the impossible 6:66. A minute later, everything resumed, cars, birds, noise, but the 7 were gone. And that's when the first guard noticed something stranger still. His watch now pulsed 7:06. At first, 7:06 looked like a glitch, a digital echo of the impossible 6:66. But the more I stared, the more it felt intentional, like someone or something had turned the page of time itself. I kept hearing the same phrase from every witness. It changed the moment they vanished. If 6 marks the limits of man, 7 has always carried the rhythm of heaven, completion, wholeness, rest. So what happens when 666 becomes 7:06? Maybe we're seeing the exact second when human time ends and divine time begins. Each heartbeat after that moment felt heavier, meaningful, like creation had just taken a breath. And in that silence, the question grew louder. What did they come to finish? Jerusalem has never been an ordinary city. Every stone hums with memory. Abraham's altar, David's music, Solomon's temple, prophets who warned and wept. This is where time and eternity have already touched once before. When dawn pours over those walls, it isn't just light, it's history waking up. And on that morning, when the guards saw the 7, the city seemed to recognize them. The wind shifted through the olive branches like a whisper, repeating old promises. Every street was still, as if listening for footsteps it had heard centuries ago. I stood there, realizing this was no random sighting. Because if heaven once walked these streets, it might be walking them again. They weren't rushing. Each step was measured, patient, almost ceremonial, as though they already knew every stone beneath their feet. The guards said their clothing wasn't robes or armor, but something between light and fabric, folding with the air itself. Faces blurred in the brightness, yet edges stayed sharp, like outlines drawn in sunlight. When one turned a corner, the others mirrored perfectly, forming a moving pattern too precise for chance. The gold of morning seemed to trail them, stretching longer than it should. No sound, no dust, no smell of footsteps, only radiance sliding over ancient walls. Then their formation faltered, a pause so brief it hurt to blink. And in that heartbeat, their direction changed, straight toward the mount. Security teams pulled camera feeds from every angle, expecting blur, glare, something they could explain. But nothing prepared them for what appeared on screen. Buildings, gates, every passerby were sharp and clear, yet the 7 figures glowed with a soft radiance that made hardware falter. Pixels threatened to dissolve whenever the light touched them. Lenses refused to focus. A technician enhanced the frames and found no distortion anywhere except around those shapes. He whispered, "The camera isn't failing, it's bowing." To him, it looked like the sensors themselves were protecting something too sacred to expose. Frame by frame, the light flickered, and then they were gone. But in the very last second of footage, one figure seemed to turn, straight toward the lens. I kept replaying that moment, frame by frame, the instant 666 shifted into 706. Every guard said the same thing. Time didn't pass, it changed. In human math, 6 means labor, survival, limits. But that final 6, multiplied, becomes the breaking point of our own design. Then 7 arrives, the symbol of completion, perfection, divine order. Maybe that glitch was heaven resetting the clock. When man's minutes collapse, something bigger starts counting. It felt like the universe had drawn a line in the dust between our seconds and his eternity. And as those digits transformed, the city seemed to exhale, like creation itself was relieved. Because when human clocks fail, only one voice keeps time. Jerusalem has always signaled before the rest of the world stirs. Every return, every rebuilt wall, every unexpected bloom in the desert, each has carried quiet echoes of promises once thought forgotten. A people scattered, gathered again, a language buried, spoken again. Now light itself walking where prophecy said glory would stand again. Those 7 figures may not speak, yet their silence rings like a trumpet call across centuries. The pattern is too familiar to dismiss. It isn't merely history repeating, it's prophecy remembering. And if these streets are once more a stage for the impossible, then something larger is already rehearsing behind the veil. Because when Jerusalem wakes, the rest of the earth listens in its sleep. When the footage ended, everything felt smaller. My desk, my walls, my heartbeat. It's one thing to hear a rumor. It's another to realize you've become part of it. The guards witnessed it first, but now every viewer becomes a witness too. You can argue accident, glare, coincidence, but something in the soul knows better. Moments like this aren't requests for belief. They're invitations to awareness. Maybe those 7 weren't walking to the city at all, but through it, testing who would notice. Each time mark, each light flare, feels like a quiet question whispered across time. Will you just watch, or will you walk when you're called? Because the message wasn't only seen, it was left behind for us to answer. I thought the story ended with the vanished figures, but Jerusalem rarely finishes its sentences. Later that morning, one guard checked his camera again, only this time frame by frame. Each picture shimmered with faint new light. It wasn't glare. It pulsed like a heartbeat, spreading outward, small at first, then stronger. He swore the glow traced the same path those 7 had walked. We measured the distance, the turns, the pauses. It formed a shape, not random, not human, a signal written in movement across the city. The moment the pattern completed, the sky above the mount flickered white and dark in one breath. Every sensor failed for exactly 1 second. And then, time stopped again.